So, after Jeffrey Epstein's death, this absolute avalanche of documents was unsealed, and it revealed a world that was, frankly, darker and way more bizarre than anyone ever imagined. It's just this tangled mess of power, depravity, and mystery. So, our goal today is to cut through all that noise. What do these thousands and thousands of pages actually tell us about the man at the very center of it all?
And just to kick things off, let's look at one single word that pops up an unsettling number of times: cannibal. Yeah, you heard that right. It shows up 52 times, usually in these weird coded sounding emails about restaurants and jerky. This is just a tiny glimpse of the strangeness we're about to dive into. It's a rabbit hole of bizarre language and horrifying ideas that, believe me, just gets deeper with every page.
All right, to make any sense of this, we're going to peel it back like an onion, layer by layer. First, we'll look at that glittering surface, his insane web of elite connections. Then we're going to dig a little deeper into the bizarre world of control he built around himself. After that, we'll uncover his sinister grand plan. And finally, we'll explore all the mysteries that are still swirling around his death.
Okay, first up, the network. You have to understand, Epstein's power wasn't just his money. It was the people he surrounded himself with. He was, as one prime minister called him, a collector of people. And his collection, well, it spans the entire globe.
I mean, the sheer range of these connections is just stunning. On one hand, you've got these top-tier American political figures like Larry Summers casually emailing about the president. And then on the other hand, you have European royalty, we're talking the future Queen of Norway, having these incredibly bizarre chummy chats with him about a wife hunt. It's just wild. And the entertainment world was just as tangled up in this. Woody Allen's name is everywhere, seriously over 7,000 times. Peggy Siegel, a huge Hollywood insider, makes this absolutely horrifying joke about bringing him a baby. Even a wellness figure like Deepak Chopra invited him on trips with his girls. It's the casualness of it all that is so deeply unsettling. It really points to a world where these awful ideas were so normal they could be discussed like making dinner plans.
And we really have to get this. These relationships weren't just social. They were deeply transactional. Epstein wasn't just collecting names for a fancy address book. He was building a web of mutual obligation. Paying for a royal's expenses or a celebrity's flight, that bought him more than just access. It bought a powerful kind of silence and influence. So we've seen who he knew. Now let's dig into how he lived. And when you peel back this next layer, you find a man who was obsessed with absolute, meticulous, and, let's be honest, bizarre control over every single thing in his environment.
Get this. His Florida mansion came with a household manual. And the rules in it were just chillingly specific. The AC had to be a freezing 60 degrees. There were precise instructions for where to place sex toys. Guns had to be kept in his bedside table. But all these strange little rules were just the warm-up for the final, most important one.
See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. This wasn't just a rule for running a house, it was the code for a cult. This was all about enforcing a culture of absolute secrecy and fear to make sure that whatever happened behind those walls stayed behind those walls, period.
And this obsession with control, it bled directly into how he viewed people. In his emails, he would literally refer to women as it, just reducing them to objects. After being sent what someone described as a torture video, his one-word reply was simply loved. It's a complete and total lack of empathy, a pure expression of dominance.
His control wasn't just in their minds, it was technological. The files actually show how he got his pilot to go buy spy cameras, these tiny motion-activated devices, and then started having them installed inside everyday objects. He was building his own private surveillance state right inside his own homes. This brings us to the very core of the onion. The trafficking, the abuse, the control. As horrifying as all that is, the files suggest it might have just been a means to an even more sinister end. This is where we get into his grand plan. So, to understand his plan, you first need to understand this concept, transhumanism. Basically, it's the idea of using science and tech to engineer a better human. For most of us, it's a sci-fi idea. For Jeffrey Epstein, it seems like it was a personal mission. He poured a ton of money into genetics and was obsessed with creating designer babies. And this fascination was rooted in some deeply, deeply racist eugenics. The files actually show him talking with scientists about finding and adjusting genes in black people to supposedly make them smarter. It's the ideology of a monster, plain and simple. And this wasn't just some abstract fantasy he had. He had a literal blueprint for what he called a baby factory at his ranch in New Mexico. The plan was to impregnate up to 20 women at a time with his own DNA, to seed the human race with his genes. It's just a grotesque, twisted, messianic vision.
And if creating his own twisted version of life was one pillar of his vision, controlling it through blackmail was the other. Remember those cameras? Well, an email to Epstein about installing them discreetly has this absolutely chilling line. The Russians may come in handy. This suggests his surveillance wasn't just for his own creepy reasons, but maybe for international espionage and leverage.
So we've seen the network, the control, and the plan. But of course, his death left behind a whole string of unanswered questions. So this final section is all about the mysteries that pretty much guarantee this story is far from over. The files are absolutely littered with bizarre code words. Pizza shows up over 900 times. Whoops is his weirdly detached go-to reply for everything from a friend's death to a violent assault. And of course, cannibal. This wasn't just slang, it was a private language, designed to hide things, to confuse people, and to bond those who were in on the secret. And then you've got the island itself, Little St. James. It's the setting for so many of these crimes, but it's also home to some very, very strange architecture. The big question is, what were these buildings actually for? You have the infamous temple, this weird striped building at the highest point of the island, with a zodiac mural on the ceiling, and then there's a literal trap door in his home that leads down into this dark pool of water. So was it for water filtration, like some people say? Or was it for something far more sinister? The physical evidence just creates more questions. It seems like even the people in his inner circle were wondering who or what he truly was. In an interview, Steve Bannon tells him he has all the attributes of the devil. And Epstein doesn't even deny it. He just replies, "The devil scares me." It's this haunting, almost self-aware admission of his own capacity for evil. But that, of course, leads us to the biggest mystery of all. After decades of getting away with it, with all these secrets and all this leverage over the world's most powerful people, why did he die at that exact moment? I mean, just look at the timeline. He's in federal prison. Less than 2 weeks before he dies, his lawyers start talking with prosecutors about his cooperation. He was on the verge of talking. And then, just like that, he's dead. The one person who held all the answers was permanently silenced, leaving all of us with a sinister web of questions and a story that is very, very far from over.